In the month when spooky things happen at night, Stanford awakened the ghost of past upsets.
This stadium is stunned right now.
The Irish offense, a treat to watch in wins over Carolina and BYU, had no tricks up its sleeves last Saturday.
I hear Coach Reese over the headset saying, "Oh shoot, that's not the look." I probably at that moment should have called a timeout.
Notre Dame Stadium, a place where echoes awaken, now seems like a haunted house for Irish fans. And as their team turns the next corner, there's a monster they've never encountered called UNLV.
The biggest thing is not just playing there, it's playing well there.
So today, do the Irish continue to zombie walk through the season, stumbling, bumbling, fumbling? Or is this the day they rise from the dead and show the spirit of past Irish teams? We look into the crystal ball for the next hour to try to find answers. Countdown to Kickoff is next.
Live from Notre Dame Stadium, this is 16 News Now's Countdown to Kickoff.
One can only hope the Irish are as brilliant as the Golden Dome or the autumn colors on this sunny October Saturday. And now you are looking live inside Notre Dame Stadium as the 3-3 Fighting Irish welcome the 4-3 UNLV Rebels to South Bend, looking to bounce back from last week's shocking loss in prime time against Stanford.
And despite what their record says, there is no place like home when home is the house that rocked you built. Thanks for tuning in to Countdown to Kickoff. I'm Matt Loch, joined by WHME Sports Director Chuck Freeby.
The Irish will try to get rid of the bad taste in their mouths after falling to a Stanford team that had not won a game against an FBS school in more than a year. It was a game that many Irish fans would rather not relive. Stanford was in control most of the night. The offense once again struggled to get going, not scoring until the 6:22 mark of the third quarter. The only Irish receiver with more than 2 catches, tight end Michael Mayer, he finished with 5 grabs, but that was on 10 targets. Notre Dame's offense made the Cardinal defense look like one of the best in the nation. They aren't, but the Irish only scored 14 points and all in the second half. The frustration from the Irish on full display after the game.
You got to give credit to Stanford. They did a good job. They played well. But our lack of execution is frustrating. You know, that was adamant today, especially in the first half. You know, we have to execute better.
Hey, one thing we got to do is just learn from it. We got a bunch of guys that are they're team guys. You know, it's a tough loss, it's a rivalry, but at the end of the day, we got to, you know, take this L and just learn and improve and just keep working. We got a lot of games left this season. We just got to keep working. You know, we can't hold our heads down. Like, we got a bunch of leaders. It's a bunch of guys that came back here for a reason. Like, we got a bunch of guys that are just ready to keep on finishing this season and just go out the right way. Like, you know, we can't dwell about this game. We got to be able to move on and just be able to improve and get ready for next week.
And in a season marked by inconsistency, no unit has been more emblematic of that than the Irish offense.
Yeah, Chuck, the struggle has been real, and fans and media alike are wondering what the root cause of that is.
Let's bring in the third member of the Countdown crew, Drew Sanders, and if you have any answers, my man, we are all ears.
Chuck, I get it. I'm here on the sideline. I've got the headset on, clipboard out, but I don't know what's going on. I'm just as confused as you guys are. It seems like this Irish offense, just like the weather here in South Bend, Indiana, can be red hot one minute and ice cold the next. Let's take a look.
You've seen the good.
There have been some plate designs today that have been magnificent, and this is one of them.
The bad?
Here's Pine. And Pine, protection breaks down. Pine loses the football.
And the ugly. So it's hard to figure out what exactly this Irish offense truly is. One thing's for sure, in first quarters, it's been non-existent. Through 6 games, the Irish have yet to score a touchdown in the opening frame.
We got to start the game with more urgency. We got to be better out of the locker room, and that's something that, you know, in the course of the season, we have to improve at.
You know, we just got to find a way to start faster, and I got to do a much better job of putting our guys in a position to have confidence going from the first play to the 70th play. You know, put it on my shoulders to make sure that we put our guys in the spot to go out there and execute.
Third downs have been a thorn in the side of this offense, Indy converting just 40% of those, which is outside the top 60 nationally. That same 40% holds true for fourth down conversions as well, where the Irish are outside the top 100.
But Thomas is stacked up and brought down.
To me, it's going back and saying, okay, how do we find a better way to execute? right? How do we find a better way to convert? We should be able to convert on 4th and 1 and 4th and 2.
But perhaps most frustrating has been the team's play here at Notre Dame Stadium. They got stunned in the home opener by Marshall before squeaking past California the following week. They then took the show on the road, scoring an average of over 35 points on their trips to Chapel Hill and Las Vegas, before laying a dud against Stanford last week.
And we touched on it a bit, but the offense has been particularly bad in the first half of games this season. Entering Week 7, only Florida International and Louisiana Lafayette have scored fewer points than the Irish at home through the first 2 quarters among FBS programs, Irish averaging 4.7 points heading into halftime. And it gets worse if you just look at the first quarter stats. The Irish are averaging just a single point in the first frame this year. Only Southern Miss is worse among FBS schools. Overall, Notre Dame is scoring 11 points in the first halves of games, no matter the venue. But on the road, they look like a different team in the first half, scoring over 17 points, tied for 25th best in the nation.
Well, if there's any time for this offense to get going at home, you would think today is the day to do it. Drew, thank you. This is one of those matters where everyone has an opinion as to both the problem and the solution. What do you see here, man?
Well, Chuck, in the game of football, momentum is a real thing. And right now, frankly, the offense has none. And to make matters worse, it seems like every time they have some momentum, they do something to give it away. Drew Pine's interception against BYU that ignited a Cougar comeback. The fumble by Estime just outside of the red zone against Stanford. So how do they get it back? Simplify what you're doing. We don't need to see a fancy end around on 4th and 2. You have a big back in Audric Estime. You have a big guy like Michael Mayer who can win one-on-one battles on those short slants. You've got to be able to find some consistent momentum, and that's the key word, consistent, if they want to try to salvage this season.
Like any relationship that's struggling, I almost feel the best answer here is it's complicated. Are the coaches to blame? Yes, and they have said that ad nauseum this week. But Marcus Freeman also said when you blame the players, you lose them. No coach wants to single out players because you don't want to stampede to the transfer portal. But the players have blame in this too. They have false started. They have dropped balls. They've missed passes on plays that were there for the taking. The lack of execution, as Freeman has said over and over again. It is not just one answer to why this isn't working. It is a total team effort, and that's what it's going to take to solve the problem as well. I know that's not what you want to hear, but if it were a simple fix, it would be done by now. So have you given up on the season? Probably not if you're still watching, but for most of you, certainly your expectations for the season have changed, and that's the topic of today's Loch Monday Auto Group Irish fan poll at WNU.com. This week we're asking, following Notre Dame's loss to Stanford, what would save the season for you? Your answer choices: winning out, winning a bowl game, beating more ranked teams, or you think this season is already beyond saving. The poll remains open until 2 Eastern. Make sure you head to our website to cast your vote. As always, thanks for participating in this week's Loch Monday Auto Group Irish fan poll, and stay tuned for the results later in the show.
There have been many great Irish coaches that have struggled in their first year in South Bend. Growing pains are real, and even for a program and college football brand like Notre Dame, you can't assume that every team the Irish play is going to be an automatic win. As Freeman searches for answers for how to turn things around in his first year as head coach, he talks with his former head coach at Ohio State, Jim Tressel, every week on what he believes he can improve on. But he also knows he can't compare himself to his predecessor, Brian Kelly, as he's trying to build up his program. He knows he has to lead this program his way, and that it's going to take some time to get the results up to where he wants them to be.
I can't build on what's been done in the past. All right, what Coach Kelly did here was tremendous, right? And what the wins and the success he had here. But I can't come in here and say, okay, I have to be Brian Kelly. I got to be Marcus Freeman, and it's different. It's different. So I got to build this thing with the current players that we have, right? The great players that we've recruited in the past, but you're still building your foundation from the ground up. And you have to go through some of these growing pains, man. Anything worthwhile, I believe in my life, it's going to take some growing pains to get it to where you want it.
The growing pains, a familiar sight for former Irish coaches in their first year leading the program in South Bend. Lou Holtz going a dismal 5-6 in year one with the Irish in 1986, and Bob Davie leading Notre Dame to a 7-6 record in his first of 5 seasons as head coach back in 1997. This season around college football, Oklahoma has struggled out of the gate with a 4-3 record under Brent Venables. Billy Napier's Florida Gators team with a 4-3 record in his first year in Gainesville. And staying in the Sunshine State, Mario Cristobal off to the same start this season as Notre Dame under Freeman with a 3-3 record. Chuck, in your mind, outside of execution, why has Notre Dame struggled in Marcus Freeman's first year as head coach?
Matt, I think inexperience is the key word. It's impossible for just about any coach to understand the demands of being the head coach at Notre Dame. The last time Notre Dame hired a coach with no experience to take over the program when it was established was Bob Davie. Succeeding Lou Holtz, that didn't go well. I think that inexperience has shown up in the losses to Marshall and Stanford. Freeman's facial expressions on the sideline displayed his frustration. Does that mean Marcus Freeman is doomed? No, but it's a tough place to be a head coach when you haven't been one before, and he has a lot to learn in a very public fishbowl. You have to give him time to sort it out. People calling for heads to roll after 6 games are just completely unrealistic.
Well, we saw in the offseason how busy Marcus Freeman was, throwing out the first pitch at a Notre Dame baseball game, helping to unveil the shirt, visiting Yankee Stadium. There's a lot to do besides football when you're the head coach at Notre Dame. And he's learning how to establish a routine and what routines to establish, and the only way to do that is to work through it. Look, Freeman was a good hire, but we knew he was going to be a work in progress, so let's let him progress.
Well, if the Irish start fast today, and there's first time for everything, it's got to be the shoes, right? Why Notre Dame is rocking some sweet cleats this afternoon, and how local charities are benefiting from the kicks when the countdown shuffles along in just over 2 minutes. But first, it's time for our Crispin Custom Painting trivia question. Name the former UNLV quarterback who gained fame as a SportsCenter anchor. The answer when we return.
Here is your Chrisman Custom Painting trivia answer.
A quarterback for UNLV in 1980 and 1981, Kenny Mayne went on to become one of the most popular Sports Center anchors of all time. Now the quirky Mayne works for NBC Sports on a variety of projects, including the National Dog Show. He'll be at the stadium today as part of Peacock's coverage of today's game between the Irish and UNLV. When the Irish take the field in about 45 minutes, they'll be doing so rocking some custom cleats.
And the best part is, they're going to be auctioned off for charity. Teaming up with Under Armour, the Irish will wear hand-painted custom cleats this afternoon that will be auctioned off to raise money for 4 local charities: the Boys and Girls Clubs of St. Joseph County, Cultivate Food Rescue, the YMCA, and the Center for the Homeless. The team's director of player personnel says the program was inspired by a similar initiative done in the NFL, My Cause, My Cleats, which gives players the chance to pick up a cause that's important to them and wear cleats inspired by that organization.
We are excited about that. Again, just bringing great partners together from Under Armour and the 4 local charities. It's really unique, and for our guys, again, it goes back to what the university is all about. Being other-centered and trying to give back to what you can into your local community.
It is great to see the team come together, raise money for charities across South Bend. NBC's hoping you'll reach into your pockets today to watch the Irish take on UNLV this afternoon. The game will be streamed exclusively on the network's streaming service Peacock. So make sure you download the Peacock app or go to peacocktv.com to create or log into your account. Now you need to have Peacock Premium, and that costs $4.99 a month to watch the game. That subscription is included free if you are an Xfinity or Comcast customer. I know. After the break, after dropping back to 500, how should fans feel about where things are going the rest of the season? Tim Priester and Tim O'Malley from Irish Illustrated join the countdown for the first time today to discuss when we return in 2 minutes. We are back live inside Notre Dame Stadium. Take a look at those gorgeous autumn colors. The Irish will take the field against UNLV in just about 40 minutes. This is about as good as it gets for a late October football game in South Bend. And you don't know what else would be good if this team could somehow find a way to win at home, because their confidence has to be reeling right now.
Yeah, Tim Priester, Tim O'Malley discussing our first Irish Illustrated segment of the afternoon.
Theo, in your sources and observations, what's the confidence level of this team right now?
The older players, I think culture shock more than confidence because they had been nothing but successful. The younger players, just look at Drew Pine if you want to lump him in with a younger player. Did he seem as confident of a player last week as he was against Brigham Young? I think when younger players struggle, they tend to lose confidence. And I don't know if I brought it up on this show before or not, but one former Notre Dame assistant coach once told me they all fake confidence. Only a couple people have it. He was talking about Will Fuller having true confidence, and other guys like to fake their confidence sometimes in this sport.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, certainly your confidence level is shaken when you're rolling. I mean, you came out of Las Vegas feeling really good about yourselves, and then you lay an egg offensively. I mean, we've heard a couple different things, and I don't put a whole lot of credence in a lot of talk about there's disgruntlement from players and coaches. I mean, there's always that. Even when you're winning, there's that. I dealt with that on a high school level. It's magnified on the level that Marcus Freeman is dealing with. But yeah, I mean, that goes with the territory. You lose at home. You lose 2 games in a row at home against teams that you shouldn't have won, and you're going to lose some confidence. This is Marshall, who hasn't played well since they beat Notre Dame, and a Stanford team that was coming in on a 4-game losing streak. So it's a little bit different. But sure, they're shaking a little bit. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
So can the problems the Irish have right now be fixed in 2022? Priester, we'll start with you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they've lost 2 games to inferior opponents by 5 points and 2 points at home. We're talking about one possession, change of one possession. Now, they didn't deserve to beat Marshall, and they didn't deserve to beat Stanford. But the fact of the matter is, one possession could have changed all that. We're talking about, and mainly it's on the offensive side of the football, because for whatever problems the defense has had, they've only given up, 21 in their losses, 21 points, 19 points off to Marshall's offense, and 16 points to Stanford. So I don't know that this is going to be a high-powered offensive team. I don't think that it's going to be, but a little bit of an improvement in consistency can certainly turn things around down the second half of the season.
Yeah, I think consistency, and we talked about this a little bit on our podcast at the very end, consistency gets you to 4 wins in the last 2 games. I do think there are problems that can't be handled right now, though, that cannot get you to 6 wins in the last 6 games. I think Notre Dame is not set up defensively on the interior to necessarily be able to win every week in that situation. I think the offensive line is good, but I don't think the skill position players are good enough to go out. I mean, you think Clemson's not going to press Notre Dame? Wide receivers and their defensive line can handle their business with 4 people. So if you're looking at how much can they improve, sure, they could definitely win 4 of their next 6 games. They could probably pull off an upset, but I don't think it's a thing where all of a sudden there is no button like this. There's no snapping of the fingers to all of a sudden make Notre Dame look like in the final 6 games a top 15 team.
Folks, you can subscribe to Irish Illustrated, the #1 source for Notre Dame sports online. Just head to irishillustrated.com. Click on Join and find the best plan for you. 50 years ago, America took a major step towards progress, granting women equal opportunities in education and expanded access in varsity athletics as their male counterparts. How Notre Dame and St. Mary's are celebrating women who are breaking barriers when the countdown continues in over 2 minutes.
Chuck, it is a beautiful day to tailgate like a champion as Notre Dame looks for their 4th win of the season and their first ever matchup against Mountain West foe UNLV.
After back-to-back weeks with night games under the bright lights, the Irish are back under the sun at Notre Dame Stadium, and that means the fans were back bright and early this morning in the tailgating lots and around campus. Lots opened at 8 a.m. Many fans hoping the Irish can come through with a win today.
And campus is busy for another reason this weekend, as 2022 marks 50 years since the recognition of Title IX, which prohibits sex-based discrimination at Notre Dame and St. Mary's. In 1972, Notre Dame enrolled its first class of undergraduate women, giving them equal opportunities in education as any male student would receive. Later that year, the university introduced women's varsity sports teams to the school. Last night, a reception and panel discussion at St. Mary's, led by women who have paved the way for female athletic programs at Notre Dame.
Mine is about equity in education, in more than sports. But, we think about it a lot in terms of athletics and the opportunities that it opened up for women in athletics. And so I think it's important that at this moment, in the 50-year anniversary year, that everyone recognize that this has taken people a long way.
Pre-Title IX and even in the early years of Title IX, we just didn't have near the opportunity, the facilities, or anything. So we've really come a long way to go, but we've come a long way.
60 St. Mary's athletes and 227 Notre Dame athletes will receive honorary monograms as part of a special ceremony during the game today. When the Fighting Irish kick off in about a half an hour, it won't be on our air, Chuck.
And that's not by our choice. Instead, the game will be streamed exclusively on the network streaming service Peacock. Make sure you download the Peacock app or go to peacocktv.com, create or log into your account. You'll need to have Peacock Premium. I know that costs $4.99 monthly. Watch the game, cancel it. However, that subscription is included free of charge for Xfinity customers. The first half of the countdown is in the books, which means there's 30 minutes to go before the Irish kick off against the Rebels. We'll get into some of the game's biggest storylines on the other side of this break. Don't go anywhere.
Live from Notre Dame Stadium, this is 16 News Now's Countdown to Kickoff.
You are looking live at the campus of the University of Notre Dame, where in about 30 minutes, the Irish have their next chance to get their season back on track as they take on a 4-3 UNLV squad in the first time matchup between the two programs. Let's get right into the second half of the countdown with some quick hits, and we'll start with the morale of this Irish team, which one would assume is shaken by the fact the Irish haven't met expectations. But that would be another incorrect assumption about this team. You heard from Houston Griffith at the top of our broadcast, who told the media after the loss to Stanford that this team has to quickly regroup and turn the page to the next game. There's no time to look down on themselves and figure out what went wrong. It is a group that has to stay focused, and that next focal point is UNLV. Here's what Marcus Freeman had to say about that area of his team on Monday.
The spirits of these kids in this program are unwavering, and that's the thing that everybody has to understand. As disappointed as we all are, and as we were on Saturday, the fight and the excitement to get a chance to play another game here in 5 days and to play for this university will never change. Why haven't we played as well at home? Why haven't we played as well really versus maybe opponents that haven't been ranked as high? Right, and it starts from the top down and looking at everything we do.
Perhaps the players are feeling that way because so much of the heat has been directed at this Irish coaching staff, especially offensive coordinator Tommy Rees. Notre Dame is averaging just below 24 points per game, and many fans are frustrated with the slow tempo and the play calls from last week's game against Stanford. But Rees is used to it. As we've told you on this show before, he's had a rocky relationship with Irish fans, even back to his playing days. But he isn't shrinking away from his duties or shouldering the blame.
We've got to do a much better job of putting our guys in a position to have confidence going from the first play to the 70th play. And, that starts with me. It starts with what I call. It gives them a chance to get into the game, feel the rhythm, have some comfortability and moving forward. And again, put it on my shoulders to make sure that we put our guys in the spot to go out there and execute.
And that starts from play one. Folks, I know Halloween is coming up, but here's one of the scariest things I've seen. Only two teams are averaging fewer points in the first half than the Irish this year: Florida International and Louisiana Lafayette. Freeman says his offensive staff has drive starters, which are plays drawn up at the start of the game based on looks they see from opposing defenses. But it all comes back to how much focus this team has when the referees blow the whistles.
Start the game faster. We got to start the game with more urgency. We got to be better out of the locker room, and that's something that, in the course of the season, we have to improve at. We start the game with 3 and out. The very first play is a penalty. We can't have penalties not on the first play of the game. We have a good football team that we have to get to perform consistently. We have to do it consistently. So the culture of this program is we're going to have to embrace these tough times and these growing pains of getting this program to where we want it to be.
Well, it's not all gloom and doom for Notre Dame. They have some outstanding performances by freshmen this season. Last week, Tobias Merriweather caught his first touchdown pass in an Irish uniform, showing the kind of explosive speed Irish fans have been hearing about in practice reports. Defensively, Ben Morrison has been a standout this season, taking the starting cornerback job from Clarence Lewis and answering the challenge. In the last 2 weeks, we've had a chance to hear from both players about their experiences.
Go-to guy outside, been very productive.
Confidence is pretty high in the playbook. Like from the beginning of training camp to now, it's just like grown tremendously in terms of just knowing what I got to do to be on the field.
I had high expectations for myself, so I wouldn't say I was surprised, but I was just, I was honored, and I feel like you don't come to Notre Dame just to be average. So I feel like in life you come to school like this to have opportunities like this.
Both those players expected to play vital roles in today's game against UNLV team that is very banged up. Quarterback Doug Brumfield, defensive end Adam Plant Jr., running back Aiden Robbins, all questionable for the Rebels entering today's game. But let's face it, the Irish haven't shown an ability to take anything for granted, and they have to be ready today for a team that has a better record than they do.
Talented football team that started off the season 4-1, that
we know is going to present a challenge to this team. And that's what I'm telling our players, that, we have to respect our opponent. And you don't have to watch too much of their film to gain a respect for the job that Coach Aurora has done with that program and what they're going to bring here in South Bend.
As for the Rebels, they're very excited for their first trip to South Bend. Marcus Arroyo, their head coach, has taken this team from a winless season in 2020 to a winning record so far in 2022. This is a school that has only played in one bowl game since 2000, so playing the Irish is a big deal. But they can't be blinded by this spotlight.
Biggest thing's not just playing there, it's playing well there. And I think that's a good story, because if you go there and you don't play well, or you go there and then it's just maybe just a trip, and we're not looking at it as a trip.
Anytime you get an opportunity like this to go into a school like that and play the sport you love, it's a great opportunity. I mean, I definitely don't want to take it for granted, and it's cool to see the places that the game takes you. I never thought I'd be in Indiana playing the game, but here we are, and it's just exciting. But then when the whistle blows and it's time to go, it's time to go, and football is just football at that point, whether you're playing in the backyard or whether you're playing in front of 80,000, it's the same game.
We mentioned the UNLV injuries. They have plenty of company from the Irish in the infirmary. Defensive lineman Jason Adamiola is a game-time decision and questionable, trying to come back from a rib contusion suffered against Stanford. Cornerback Jaden Mickey is now out with that abductor strain that he suffered in last week's game. Freshman tight end Eli Raridan out for the season after re-tearing the ACL he tore last December, meaning Dr. Brian Radigan continues to be a busy surgeon. It would be nice if the Irish could finally come out of a game unscathed, but we'll see. Basketball season right around the corner. No one more excited than Irish head coach Mike Bray. The Irish boss can't wait to start his 23rd season. He joins us on the countdown in just a couple minutes. But first, here's another Crispin Custom Painting trivia test. We want to know which active Notre Dame player has the most career tackles. Think about it. We'll give you the answer when the countdown returns.
Five years in Delaware. How much did that help you as opposed to what?
Big time.
Yeah.
And the great thing about Delaware, unlike Marcus's situation, when I made the mistakes, it was in front of 700 people.
Yeah.
There was no national TV at Delaware. No, it's a hard transition. It's hard. Tomorrow.
Bus has Peacock?
What's that?
The bus have Peacock?
It does. We'll watch it.
Here is your Crispin Custom Painting trivia answer.
This one is a little tricky because most of his tackles were made in another uniform. Brandon Joseph is the active Irish player with the most career tackles, making 161 stops in his 4 years on the field. The first 3 years were at Northwestern. This year, Joseph has been credited with 25 tackles for the Irish. J.D. Bertrand is the next player on the career list.
at 144.
Back in on the countdown with a very special guest, the guy that's been on the show almost as much as I have, Notre Dame men's basketball coach Mike Bray. Thanks for being here.
Oh, Chuck, good to be with you. We're still doing it, aren't we, buddy?
We are.
Coach, after a 5-year absence from the NCAA tournament, your team returned to the big dance last season. What made last year's team crack the field of 68?
Well, we sure needed. We needed to be back to kind of regain our momentum. I feel we've done that. Probably our leadership and our seniority, Apprentice Hub, Paul Atkinson, Dane Goodwin, Nate Leshevsky, Cormac Ryan, those three are still back, which I love. But, we learned how to play together. We learned how to win. We got better defensively, and I think that got us over the hump.
Last year you had the chance to talk about one of the most talked about freshmen on this team for some time, in Blake Wesley. What did you enjoy about coaching that Riley product?
It was such a great story, Chuck. Here he is, Riley High School, comes to us, a product of the pandemic. He really didn't get to be seen much, which helped us recruit him, by the way. But he just took off and kind of ignited us and played fearlessly. And the old guys knew we needed him to win. And I was proud of him on draft night. He was drafted 26 by the Spurs, and it was the right decision. Your window to strike professionally is short, and he'll come back and graduate someday, just like Jerome Bettis.
Coach, you open your season at home this year against Radford, November 10th. How do you hope to build on last season's success this one?
Well, I think letting our leadership and our 5 fifth-year seniors lead the way. They learned how to win. They learned how to win in the tournament, which is most important. They have really high goals and big dreams, and I want them to keep setting the tone, for us.
I know you love those old players, but you don't mind having J.J. Starling on the team this year. How much of an immediate impact does he make on this squad?
He'll be in there immediately. I've been so impressed with how easy he is to play with, how good a passer he is, physically ready to do it, can defend. Even Ben Allen Lubin and Dom Campbell, our other 2 freshmen, those 3 have come in very mature.
Coach, you graduated 6 players listed on your roster this season. How does having an older roster help this team make the leap?
That they won together, they really do know the recipe. And I have a big 3 in Leshevsky, Goodwin, and Ryan. Those guys really set a great tone. They have made sure our practice have been sharp, and I'm excited to let them lead us as we move forward.
Even though they're old players, they don't have the gray beard like this guy. Thanks for taking the time to come on the show today. We appreciate it. Radford, November 10th.
November 10th.
When's your first exhibition?
We have an exhibition game November 2nd against Xavier. Come out and see us. And we play right. We move that ball.
Mike's going to get on a bus for Chicago. They have a scrimmage tomorrow. I double-checked. They have Peacock on the bus. You need Peacock as well.
The game will be streamed exclusively on the network streaming service. Make sure you download the Peacock app or go to peacocktv.com to create or log into your account. You'll need to have Peacock Premium, which costs $4.99 a month to watch the game. However, that subscription is included free of charge for Xfinity customers.
After the break, the Tims from Irish Illustrated rejoin the countdown. Is there such a thing as an easy game for the Irish at this point? You want to hear their answers when we come back in just over 2 minutes. Back inside the countdown, just under 15 minutes away from kickoff. Time to reveal how fans voted in this week's Loch Monday Auto Group Irish fan poll at WNU.com. This week we asked Irish fans following Notre Dame's loss to Stanford, what would save the season for you? 24% of the audience says winning out the rest of the way, going 9-3 in the regular season. 10% say winning the bowl game would finish the season on a high note. 22% say wins against more ranked teams. Finally, 44% think the season is beyond saving, and instead of Notre Dame on Peacock, they're watching Caillou. As always, thanks for participating in this week's Loch Monday Auto Group Irish fan poll. Be sure to watch Countdown to Kickoff before Notre Dame football home games all season long for more fan polls like this one. Starting slow out of the gate at Notre Dame has happened for some head coaches of the program's past.
That's where we pick up the conversation with Tim Priester and Tim O'Malley in our second Irish Illustrated segment of the afternoon.
You've already touched on the similarities with Lou Holtz and Brian Kelly in terms of slow home starts, but they had kind of slow starts overall in their Notre Dame careers. Do you see any similarities with Marcus Freeman here?
You know, Lou Holtz was so established, and Brian Kelly, while not an established Power 5 coach, he was on his way to being a Hall of Fame coach at Grand Valley State already, and he had already turned around two programs. I mean, he made Cincinnati into a BCS playoff contender, into a BCS contender. I think the benefit of the doubt went to those guys because you knew what they had done. They'd been there, done that, seen it, turned things around. They had struggles, they turned them around. So I don't see similarities there. I think people could have faith in Marcus Freeman. We talked about this in August. There was no chance this would be Marcus Freeman's best coaching job of his college career in year one. He has way too much to learn. He had way too much to learn. He's going to have a lot to learn next year after they have a better record next year than they did this year in terms of building and sustaining a program.
Yeah, I can't say there are similarities either. I mentioned who Brian Kelly lost to in his first year. But not only that, the situations that the coaches took over. I mean, Lou Holtz took over for Jerry Faust. That was a disaster situation. Brian Kelly took over for Charlie Weiss. They were 16-21 in the previous 3 years. Marcus Freeman inherited a ultra successful football program that was averaging 11 wins a year for the previous 5 years. So similarities, I'm a little caught off guard trying to come up with similarities to what's happened up to this point.
Theo, we thought there was going to be easy opponents at home in 2022. Is UNLV actually one?
I think they are now. Now, if Doug Brumfield doesn't play, he's missed the last two games, or most of the last 2 games in concussion protocol, their quarterback. He really kind of made them click. They were turning into a little bit of a story at the start of the year at 4-1 with their only loss to Cal. It was a game similar to Notre Dame's in that it was 20-14, and it was a bit of a slugfest. With him, I think they're viable. Without him, they have not looked that way. If Brumfield plays, I think there's that puncher's chance to keep it close. And Notre Dame doesn't score in the first quarter. Well, they only have 3 quarters to blow you out, right? So it could really stay close that way.
Yeah, and I think in addition to Brumfield, they need him, but their running back Aiden Robbins, who's a 230-pounder transfer from Louisville, who's a lot like Estime. His pad level's not as good as Estime, but he's still a bit of a beast. He hurt his knee last week, so they don't have. They probably won't have those 2 guys. They have a defensive end by the name of Adam Plant Jr., who I believe is their best defensive lineman, and he missed last week as well. So, yeah, they start out 4-1, which I think is their best start in like 14 years. They only won 2 games in the last 2 years combined, so the 4 wins has doubled that already. But they've been brought back down to earth. They've got Cameron Friel is a decent quarterback, but I don't think UNLV is in a position to really truly compete with Notre Dame without those guys.
And you can subscribe to Irish Illustrated, the #1 source for Notre Dame sports online. Just head to irishillustrated.com and click on Join to find the best plan for you.
Running out of time on the countdown, which means it's almost time for the Dairy Queen keys to the game. Who's going to step up for the Irish today? We'll reveal the answers after the break.
It's time for our keys to the game, brought to you by Dairy Queen. Happy tastes good.
Before we turn it over to our sweet picks, thanks to Dairy Queen, we have to remind you, today's game is not on WNDU. It is streamed exclusively on NBC's streaming service, Peacock. If you think that was our choice, you're wrong. Make sure you download the Peacock app or go to peacocktv.com, create or log in to your account. Now, you have to get Peacock Premium, and that costs $4.99 monthly to watch the game. However, that subscription is included free if you are an Xfinity or Comcast customer. So, gentlemen, by now you know the drill. We should be in mid-season form on this. Maybe we'll actually get something right today. Matt Loch, let's start with you. X factor for the Irish today.
I feel like I'm the one the most that needs to get something right because I've been way off all season. My X factor is going to go with the experienced guy in the running back room because when you need to get the offense started, you got to lean on your running game, and that's going to be Chris Tyree. Now, even if Tyree is not the highest scorer this afternoon, he needs to be the one to get the offense going and take a lot of pressure off Drew Pine because we've seen Drew Pine play very well. We've seen Drew Pine struggle. If we can help him out, that should help the offense.
And, Matt, if you remember last week, I went with Tyree as well. Coming off of a tough game against BYU, looking for him to bounce back. This week I'm going on the opposite side of the ball, Brandon Joseph out of the secondary. The Irish are dead last in the country in generating turnovers. The last team in the country. Now, Joseph was a highly touted transfer coming from Northwestern, but hasn't made any splash plays. You can see here he's capable of making them, here forcing a fumble against BYU. But is this the week we finally see him make the big play? I think it could be.
As we heard about earlier on the show, this is the Cleats for Cause game, the Irish wearing special custom cleats to benefit charities in South Bend. So I'm going to go with a guy that's been big one of those causes, and that's Isaiah Foskey. Perhaps he can cultivate some sacks today. The guy was a sack machine last season. He has had only 3 this season, and they've been pretty quiet. I know he's getting double-teamed a lot, but today, bring the awareness to those sack lunches you're making by getting some QB sacks as well. And a strip sack wouldn't hurt either for a team that is dead last in turnovers this season. So, all right, keys to win. Matt, what does it take for the Irish to come out on top today?
A lot. Let's start with they got to protect the ball in the red zone. Esteme's fumble last week was recovered just outside of the red zone, but we're still going to count that. And the turnover on downs is just as bad as a turnover. If you get into the red zone, put up points. Even if you bring in Blake Grupe, 3 points are better than none. And I know I was not good at math.
So go back to the Marcus Freeman mantra at the beginning of the year, finish.
And
score.
Grupe's been exceptional this year. I would love to see some more of him out on the field if we feel like we can't finish drives. But for me, my key to win is trust your talent. Guys like Tobias Merriweather and Jaden Thomas have shown flashes in the offense so far. We need them to kind of step up and be bigger parts of the offense, especially going into a loaded back half of the season. We need as many weapons as we can muster. If we get them some quality looks today, I feel like they'll be more comfortable going forward.
Look, I've said it for a couple of weeks. And if it weren't going to break the mic, I would scream it right now. Start quickly. Irish, would it kill you to get a touchdown in the first quarter? It would be the first time this year. 2 field goals. 2 measly field goals is all you have in the first quarter. To borrow from another network, come on, man. And of course, if you score a touchdown on Peacock, does it really count? Let's hope so, and let's hope they score a few today. So that brings us to the final score predictions today. Somehow Notre Dame is favored by 26 points at last check, which blows my mind considering they don't score 26 a game. Does UNLV get negative numbers? Matt, what say you?
Remember last week when I said Notre Dame was going to go 40 points against Stanford?
Yeah.
And boy, was I wrong on that one. Well, guess what? I learned my lesson. Notre Dame's going to get the win, but it's going to be a little bit more lower scoring. I've got the Irish pulling away 21-10. Maybe a defensive touchdown to help, but 21-10.
Yeah, I'm sticking with the home team as well. I think they win around 27-13. In a perfect world, yeah, it'd be a larger gap against a team that they're favored by 26 to win over. But until we see them put together a full 4-quarter performance that we can all be proud of, I've got my doubts about this team.
I'm going Notre Dame 35, UNLV 10. I really don't know why. They've only scored over 30 more than once, but it's too nice a day in South Bend for me not to be optimistic. So now let's get ready to turn it over to Jack Collinsworth and Jason Garrett for Peacock's coverage of the Irish and Rebels. Again, that's on Peacock. We are back on 16 News Now at 6. Drew and I will have highlights and reaction for this one. So, for Drew Sanders, Matt Loch, our producer Jordan Gould, and our talented WNDU crew, I'm Chuck Freeby saying thanks for watching. Kickoff between Notre Dame and UNLV is up next, and it comes your way on Peacock.